My name's Louis. I built a resort from nothing but sweat and sacrifice. Now, my daughter handed it to her husband's family like I never existed. You're just the past, Dad, she said. They smiled as they replaced my name with his. But the past has a voice, and the will, it remembered me. Want to know what happened next? Montana summers always held memories, not all of them warm, but they clung to the air like the smell of pine after a storm. I sat on the porch swing of the old lakeside resort my wife and I built from the ground up. The boards beneath my feet creaked the same way they had for years, whispering old stories of laughter, firecrackers, and wet towels dropped by kids running wild through the hallways. But that morning, something felt off. The lake was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds seemed hesitant. Maybe they sensed it too. The stillness, the shift. Something was coming, and I wasn't sure I wanted to see it through. We used to host these summer gatherings like clockwork after Dolores passed. She would have wanted the family together, wanted me to keep the spirit alive. So I tried. Lord knows I tried. I heard tires crunching gravel long before I saw their faces. Dahlia's SUV came to a smooth stop. Evan stepped out first, all smiles and polished shoes. Then Dahlia, her face painted with enthusiasm, but her eyes told a different story. They were guarded, rehearsed. Dad, she called, too brightly. Isn't this weather just perfect? I stood, offered a nod, and a half smile. Still beats Florida humidity. They hugged me like strangers, quick, polite, no warmth. No, how have you been, Dad? Just surface-level pleasantries. It stung more than I let on. Then came the surprise. A second vehicle pulled up behind them. Out came Evan's parents, Harold and Patrice, followed by his sister and her boyfriend. No warning, no call, no heads up. My heart sank. I forced a grin. Didn't realize we were hosting the in-laws this year. Harold clapped me on the back like we were old pals. Spur of the moment. Figured we'd come see what all the fuss was about with your little cabin. Little cabin. They treated our legacy like cheap motel towels, useful, disposable, and never worth folding right. Last time they were here, they made snide remarks about the dated decor Dolores chose. I remember her face when she heard them. I remembered everything. Dinner that night was set on the long pine table Dolores picked out herself. Candlelight danced between plates, casting soft glows on everyone's faces. The air buzzed with small talk, but underneath, something coiled tight in my gut. Midway through the second bottle of wine, Dahlia rose, glass in hand. To new beginnings, she said, raising it high. We're turning this place into something new with Evan's family. Silence. I blinked. What? I asked. Tone even. Evan beamed. It's time we bring the resort into the modern era. We've got plans, eco-retreats, weddings, events, the whole package. Dahlia nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear like she used to when she was nervous. I'm taking over management. It's what Mom would have wanted for us to keep it alive. I didn't recall Dolores ever saying that. Not like this. Family doesn't mean ownership, she added, like it was some kind of virtue. I said nothing, just sat back and listened. They were carving up something I built nail by nail, I thought. Every inch of this place had my sweat in it. Every beam, every window pane, every dock plank. They spoke of legacy like it was a spreadsheet. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and laughter had faded into the guest rooms, I slipped into the study. Dolores once told me, during a rainy night years ago, if anything ever happens, check the blue box in the back of the bookcase. Not the obvious one. I did. Behind the tattered yearbooks and her dog-eared copy of Little Women, I found it. Inside, the backup will, Clean. Signed. Stamped. The deed? Still in my name. Not a share. Not a half. Full title. Until my last breath. I sat in that chair for a long time, fingers running over the paper's edges. I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel shock. I felt clarity. Sometimes, you win by letting the other side think they've already won. Let them build their little plans. Let them toast and draw up dreams. They'd forgotten one thing. I'm still here. And I'm not done. I folded the will, tucked it into my shirt pocket. Took a deep breath. I may be old, but I ain't obsolete. They'd played their hand too early. Thought I'd roll over, nod along, maybe give a little sentimental speech and step aside. Not today. I walked back to the dining room, where a few stragglers still sat with coffee mugs and half-eaten pie. I didn't say a word, just laid the will on the table. Flat. Their eyes followed it like it was a grenade. I looked at Dahlia, then at Evan. Calm. Unshaken. Let's talk about ownership, shall we? Montana mornings don't lie. They don't dress themselves up in polite smiles or scripted greetings. They come in cold and honest, sharp enough to wake even the most stubborn parts of your soul. That morning, I walked the East Dock like I always had. 30 years of ritual don't break overnight. But something was different. The mist over the lake hadn't lifted yet. The boards beneath my feet groaned like they remembered better days. I waved to one of the groundskeepers, a young kid named Jaden, but all I got was a nod. No smile. No, "Good morning, Mr. Louis." Just a quick glance before he ducked back behind the tool shed. Inside the kitchen, I reached for my usual coffee mug, the one Dolores got me that said, "World's okayest dad." It was gone. In its place was some generic ceramic thing with a logo stamped across it. Clearshore Hospitality. It was still my dock, still my home, but somehow I felt like a guest walking through it. By mid-morning, I found myself in the main office. Used to be my sanctuary, back when I handled bookings by hand and balanced the ledgers with a pencil and my own arithmetic. Now Evan's name was on every clipboard. The whiteboard on the wall no longer had room rates or cabin repair notes, just words like ROI and Q3 growth. I waited until the assistant stepped out to take a call, then quietly opened the bottom drawer of the file cabinet. It stuck at first, probably hadn't been opened in weeks. Inside, I found a stack of unsigned forms. Operational Realignment Draft. Phase 1. Each page laid out plans for transferring control of daily operations to Evan and a new board of advisors. Some dated 3 weeks before they arrived. They'd started cutting me out long before that dinner toast. Then I saw the budget proposal. Clean. Color-coded. Efficient. I scanned down until I saw a name I hadn't expected. Marcia. Longtime housekeeper. Friend. Practically family. Her hours were marked for reduction. Notes scribbled beside it. Phase out legacy hires cost inefficiencies. They were killing the soul of this place line by line, I thought. No confrontation. No discussion. Just quiet erasure. A memory surfaced. Dolores, sitting across from me one snowy evening years ago. She'd said, "Never sign anything you didn't read yourself, Lou. Trust isn't paperwork." She was right. She always was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the halls like a ghost, trying to steady the storm inside me. As I passed the staff lounge, I heard voices low, clipped, but unmistakably clear. Grant's voice, Evan's father, carried through the crack in the door. "The old man's still kicking," he said. "We need to speed this up. Emotionally, financially, whatever works." Evan didn't laugh, but he didn't stop him either. "Clearshore wants full control before Q4. he replied. I've got the paperwork nearly done. They were rebranding the resort under a new name. I stood there, frozen, listening to my own legacy be sliced apart like deli meat. Not a single word about what I'd built, not even respect for the bones of it. You don't fight fire with fire, I told myself. You wait till they think the fire's out, then light the match. The next morning, Marcia found me in the laundry room, folding linens like it was 1989. She didn't say much, but her eyes did. They've cut my hours, she whispered, careful not to glance at the security camera overhead. And I saw Evan's brother measuring the main hall yesterday, talking about knocking out the west wall for weddings. I nodded. Keep anything strange you hear. Emails, notes, anything. She gave a slight smile. Still your house, Mr. Louis. I haven't forgotten. Neither had I. Marcia was the first one to hold Dahlia when she was born. She taught her how to fold hospital corners on a bed, showed her how to iron without leaving lines, and now she was being swept aside like a loose rug. We didn't shake hands. We didn't hug. But we understood each other. Loyalty runs deeper than blood, sometimes. That afternoon, I reopened Dolores's will, the one hidden in the blue box. I'd read it 3 times before, but now I read it slower. There it was, halfway down the page, in her handwriting. This place belongs to the hands that built it. Until those hands are cold. She knew. She always knew. I sat back in the chair and exhaled through my nose. Quiet. Steady. Looks like they'll need more than ambition to bury me. I sat at the upright piano in the music room, fingers brushing keys I hadn't touched in years. The notes came out uneven, off-key, like my heart. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the mountain ridge, dark and silent, presaging what was to come. I tapped the bench, felt an uneven panel, and lifted it. Hidden beneath was a sealed envelope. Dolores never played piano, but she knew where to leave the music I'd one day need. Inside, her handwriting was familiar, timeless. Lou, if they ever try to rewrite everything, remember trust evidence, not intention. 2 months before she died, she predicted this moment. She wrote of whispers in corridors, of promises broken later. She feared Dahlia might choose ease over loyalty. She warned of shadows creeping where she and I once built light. As I read, tears brimmed. Not from grief, from clarity. I saw the outlines of betrayal Dolores had traced long ago, ahead of even me. The afternoon sun dimmed, partly by clouds, partly by memory. I drifted back 10 springs earlier. Dahlia and I in a meadow behind the resort. I had offered her the place, told her she could take over when I was ready. She shook her head gently. I want to earn what you built, not inherit it. Her eyes were hopeful then, pure. That version of Dahlia held integrity, ambition, kindness. When did that girl disappear? When did silence swallow her voice? I rose and stepped into the courtyard. Evan stood there, talking with staff about rebranding. He wore a casual smile, as though he owned the past already. Dahlia, near him, said quietly, "Inheritance is a fancier eviction," laughing. The laughter stung like salt. I raised my glass to lips I no longer felt. Marcia's eyes flickered behind me, she knew. I excused myself, wandered past the veranda toward the wind. Rain broke in the distance. I paused, felt each raindrop on my face like a truth laying bare. I slipped Dolores' letter into my jacket, along with a folder of financial statements I'd begun compiling months ago. Quietly. This resort wasn't a gift. It wasn't sentimental property. It was a battlefield that I would defend. I whispered into empty air. I wasn't just defending my name anymore. I was defending hers. I walked into the main lodge just before sunset. The air was heavy with that phony brand of formality handshakes that meant nothing. Laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. The room gleamed, polished wood floors reflecting soft amber light. They'd arranged chairs in rows facing a long table, but not one with my name, not even a spot saved. I stood there a moment, throat clearing just loud enough to be noticed, but nobody turned. They taught me to build family, not demand a throne, I thought, as I scanned the room. There along the far wall, a blank frame. Something had been removed. I didn't sit, not yet. The meeting began with Dahlia welcoming everyone. She didn't look at me when she said, "We assumed Dad would prefer to sit back and relax this time." Evan took over from there, clicking through slides like he was hosting a seminar, not dismantling a lifetime. Budget allocations for new branding. Phase 1 of staff restructuring already in motion. I caught that line. I caught them all. Every bullet point, every vague promise about modernization and streamlined leadership. It was written like I'd already passed. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. But inside, I was counting every cut like a man watching himself be erased in real time. They drafted me out of the speech before I even opened my mouth. After they adjourned, I didn't linger. I followed the hallway down toward the gallery. That stretch of corridor had always been sacred. Generations of photos, hung with pride grandparents in black and white, fishing with cane poles. Dolores and I, beaming beside the first guest to check in. But her portrait? Gone. The frame was still there, empty. Where it once read, "Vane and Dolores Founders," now was just clean drywall. Freshly patched. A staff member walking by muttered something about rebranding the history wall. I stared at that blankness. She had picked that photo herself, soft blue blouse, eyes wrinkled from smiling too wide. She cried that day, said it felt like finishing a song that took 30 years to write. "You can remove the image," I whispered, "but not the memory." Marcia passed by, head slightly bowed. I asked her quietly what happened. She looked around before speaking, barely a whisper. Corwin ordered it down, said it clashed with the new look. I placed a hand on her shoulder, light but firm. "You're not alone," I said. "Watch, listen, keep the old notes, even if they don't play them anymore." She nodded. And right then Corwin walked by. That smug, nonchalant nod of his, like this was all just business. I didn't nod back. He's the blade behind the boardroom, I thought. I must not let him forget who forged the steel. Later that evening, as the last of them trickled out of the room, I returned. But this time, I brought my own chair. It wasn't fancy. Just a folding one, paint chipped from storage. I set it down where no one had reserved a space. I placed Dolores's locket on the table, right where her name used to hang on the wall. They may have redrawn the walls, but they can't redraw my legacy. I sat alone in my cabin that evening, Dolores's letter open on the small writing desk. The lamp's flicker trembled against shadows, as if the room itself was listening. Silence surrounded me, no knocks on the door, no phone calls, nothing. The wind in the pines outside sounded like her voice, urging me on. I reached into the drawer, withdrew a second sealed envelope from the original deed, meticulously preserved. Truth doesn't always speak. Sometimes it waits for the fool to finish talking. I asked Dahlia to meet me by the fireplace at the lounge. Late, but not too late. She arrived, coat draped over her shoulders, expression cool. I spoke plainly, reminding her of the girl I once knew, the one who wanted challenge, not ease. Maybe she'd remember. I urged her to pull back before it was too late. Her eyes darted away. She said, "It's not personal. It's structural." That cut deeper than any insult. She told me they had already filed intent for restructuring. No pretense now, they were all in. I laid out a compromise. Restore balance, honor trust, avoid ruin. She shook her head. You had your time. This is my legacy now, she said, as though she were finally claiming a throne I barely recognized. Evan burst in then, flanked by a legal assistant. He handed me a formal notice questioning my mental capacity to hold rights. He claimed age, forgetfulness, isolation. You'll be remembered as a sweet old man who forgot when to leave, he whispered. His smirk burned. I didn't argue. I said, memory may fade, but intent? That burns eternal. Without hesitation, I produced the sealed envelope and placed it on the table. He stared at it, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Later, Marcia came to see me. She'd heard whispers, staff interviews, rumors of misbehavior. One housekeeper had been pressed to claim I yelled at her. She refused. I handed Marcia a new set of keys. You'll guard more than linen from now on, I told her. I didn't need many people, just the right ones. She gave me that look, pride mixed with worry. She's not the girl you raised anymore, but you're still the man she fears, she said softly, and left. In solitude, I burned a copy of the false legal document Evan served. Flames curled upward. I watched the ash drift. This is the only part of their plan I approve of, I muttered. Their war came dressed in meeting rooms and legal memos. I'd meet them with fire and truth. They thought they had fixed the game board, but they forgot. When a man is pushed far enough, silence becomes his weapon. The sun hadn't fully broken through when I stepped into the law office. It was quiet, unnervingly so. A single envelope sat on the floor, just inside my door. No label, no name. I picked it up, noting the faint water stain on the corner and the smudged ink across the folded flap. Inside was a short, slanted note in Cassio's handwriting. They forged. They backdated. Look at page 24 and 32. My pulse surged, but I made sure my hands didn't show it. I tucked the note into my jacket, drew a slow breath, and made my way to the conference hall where the meeting would begin. I already knew I wouldn't be heard, but I also knew I wouldn't be silent. Cassio met me in his office, blinds half drawn, his voice barely above a whisper. I showed him the note. He nodded grimly and opened a folder already laid out on his desk. There they were, copies of property transfer documents, one signed by Louis Vane in bold ink. Problem was, that signature was from a different pen, layered above printed text, and scanned with a timestamp that didn't match the document's footer. Dahlia and Evan submitted these months ago, Cassio said, pointing to the metadata tags. They replaced originals, had backdated witnesses, even used old logos to make it look right. I stared at my name, my forged name. They didn't just take the resort, I said. They erased my hand from its design. Cassio looked uneasy. If you go in guns blazing, they'll flip the narrative. They've set you up to look like a confused old man with hurt pride. I understood. Timing mattered. I'd get one shot, and I had to choose it carefully. The boardroom was colder than usual. Not in temperature, just in tone. Dahlia sat tall, flanked by Evan and Corwin. The council members wore unreadable expressions, but their silence said plenty. I stood when my name was called, took the mic, and began. I have come across... Click. The mic cut off. No feedback hum. Just sudden quiet. Evan stood. Protocol override, he said, like a man reciting a parking ticket. Only current executive council members are allowed speaking rights during this segment. He gestured toward Dahlia. who didn't meet my eyes. Her mouth didn't move, but her jaw tightened, like she couldn't decide if she wanted to stop it or let it play out. I stayed standing, letting the silence fill the room where my voice had been. People glanced around, some whispering, others shifting in their chairs. Corwin leaned in, wearing that politician's calm. "Mr. Vane, you're out of order. Please return to your seat." I didn't move. I didn't argue. Instead, I scanned the room faces I'd known for decades now, pretending they didn't see what was happening. I found Cassio across the table, gave him the slightest nod. He reached into his folder and slid a flash drive across to me, beneath a notepad. I picked it up slowly, met Evan's gaze. "You just committed treason against history," I said. His smirk faltered for a beat. Just long enough. I left the room without another word, the flash drive cold in my palm. Down the hallway, into a side office I once used for calls with Dolores, I sat at the desk and slid the drive into my laptop. A preview popped up. Scans, recordings, voice clips, timestamps, and most damning of all, a private video conference where Evan clearly laid out their plan. "He'll fold. He's tired. We'll just make it all look clean, and by the time he reacts, we'll already own the memory." I stared at the screen, not angry, not shocked, just clear. They expected silence, but they handed me the key to their undoing. The tires crunched softly against the gravel as I pulled up to the resort gate. The security booth lights flickered on, bathing the windshield in a sterile glow. I stepped out of the car, holding my badge like I'd done for decades, expecting the usual nod, maybe even a tired smile. But the guard inside didn't move. Instead, the barrier arm lowered with a hard mechanical clank before I could get close. I stood there, calm. "I built this road. Let me pass." The guard's voice came through the intercom, flat and rehearsed. "Your access is suspended, sir, until further notice." I let that sink in. No yelling, no pounding, just silence. I looked up at the iron gate, the one I personally approved when we expanded this side entrance, and now it was locked against me. I never expected walls to rise around my own gates. I walked closer, showed my ID, held up the deed copy. "You know who I am." The man avoided eye contact. "New administrative protocols, orders from executive management." "You're not cleared, sir." I took a step back. "Name?" He didn't answer. Behind me, tires rolled over gravel. I turned in time to see Dahlia's car pull up. She didn't stop, didn't roll down the window, just kept driving, like I wasn't there. "They took the driveway before they took the deed," I muttered. From the side corridor beyond the booth, Marcia appeared, half hidden in the shadows of the landscaping. She waved me over, hushed. "Come this way." Quietly. We ducked into the utility path, snaking behind the employee wing. She kept her voice low. "Corwin issued a directive last week. I flagged it, but couldn't stop it. He told security to block you from all access points. Said it was for safety and optics." She pulled a folded note from her jacket and passed it to me. I unfolded it, typed message, with Corwin's signature at the bottom. "Remove Louis Vane from all internal systems. No access, no posters, no archival displays. Immediate effect." I stared at the words, letting their weight settle. Not just locked out, erased. Marcia's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I couldn't say no, but I kept a copy. I knew you'd need to see." I looked at her tired eyes, honest heart. "You stand with me, not them," I said. She nodded, shoulders stiff, like she'd been carrying that burden longer than anyone realized. We moved through the back corridor, past the employee lockers, the service kitchen, the laundry room. I helped redesign 10 years ago when the plumbing was failing. All of it mine. Still breathing. Still warm. But stripped of my name. We came to the hallway where the founder's wall used to be. Now, just a row of blank frames. No plaques, no memories. Not even dust marks where the portraits once hung. Marcia pointed. Beside one of the frames, a printed label. Future faces only. I stared at that sign like it was a gravestone. They weren't just rewriting the rules. They were rewriting the story. And not just any story, mine. Dolores's. Every late night, every family meal skipped for this place. Wiped away with the same cold hand that locked the gate behind me. I didn't touch the wall. Didn't need to. Instead, I turned back, and Marcia followed. Back through the kitchen, out the staff entrance, around the side to the cabin I still technically owned, at least on paper. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me. The house smelled of cedar and quiet. In the corner stood the safe. I knelt, spun the dial, opened it. Inside, Dolores's final letter. And the original deed, notarized. With witnesses and timestamps no one could touch. I placed them both on the table, then locked the door. They built walls. I will break them with truth. I sat at the far end of that long mahogany table, sunlight sliding across the grain like it was trying to smooth over the tension in the room. The documents were already stacked, neat, clinical, waiting. Dahlia sat 2 seats to my left, hands folded tight, jaw clenched. Her face gave nothing away. Evan lounged back with forced ease, tapping his pen like he wasn't trying to burn a hole through the lawyer's face. Grant said nothing. Shoulders slumped. Corwin wasn't there, but he dialed in his voice, waiting quietly on speaker. I looked down at my hands and thought, a will isn't a farewell, it's a blueprint for truth. The executor broke the silence by cracking open the envelope. For a second, the air itself seemed to stop moving. The reading started with all the expected jargon. Names, dates, sound, mind and body, nonsense. Everyone nodded, like it was a formality. Then the sentence came so clean, it might have been etched in stone. In the event of any moral or legal violation by named inheritors, all assets shall revert to Louis E. Hartford. Evan stood so fast his chair slammed backward. That's not in the version I saw. This is doctored. His voice pitched high, grasping at control. I didn't flinch. I reached into my folder, pulled out a single-page document with Dolores's signature at the bottom, dated 5 years before her passing. I slid it across the table. The lawyer took it, adjusted his glasses, read silently, then nodded. It's valid. It supersedes the amended drafts. Dahlia went pale. Lips parted, but no words came out. Someone in the back of the room muttered, he had it all along. I looked directly at Evan and said, you tried to rewrite my history, but you forgot the footnotes. I leaned in, steady. Please confirm, I said to the lawyer, what's included in the reversion. He read the list aloud. The full resort portfolio, the Hartford home base, the brand rights, patents, legal trademarks, every last piece. Grant blinked like someone had just poured ice water over him. Evan didn't say another word, he just walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. I didn't smile, just exhaled through my nose and let the stillness land. I looked at Dahlia, motioned to the chair next to me. You can sit, if you want. She didn't. She looked away. I didn't want your defeat, I said. Only my dignity. No one answered. And that said more than anything else could have. My eyes drifted. That table had seen laughter, contracts, tears. Now it bore silence. I thought back being pushed out, lied to, watching my own signature disappear from foundation plaques. That feeling of being slowly erased by the people you built everything with. Sometimes, I said aloud, justice wears a lawyer's suit. Sometimes it wears silence. Corwin's voice came through the speaker. I knew about the clause, Louis. I saw it. Years ago. I should have told you. I didn't yell. Didn't curse. I just said, truth delayed is still betrayal. He said nothing after that. Dahlia lowered her head. I'm sorry, she whispered. It was barely audible, like a thread unraveling in wind. I nodded. That's all I had left to give. The executor slid the last envelope across the table. Final transfer papers. I picked them up. Stood. My legs felt heavier than they should have. Not from age. From memory. I didn't linger. I nodded to the room, no speeches. Just walked out. The hall outside was quiet, sun filtering in through slatted blinds. I made my way to the parking lot. My old truck sat waiting, a little dustier than usual, but loyal as ever. I paused by the driver's side door and looked out. The mountains in the distance stood like they always had. They didn't need applause. They just stood. I whispered to no one. It wasn't revenge I claimed today. It was my name.